Okay, last installment. Politics and public policy. How do things manage to get done in government? Citizens have grievances. They want politics and they want policies, but politics and policies oftentimes fail. It's just the way things are. But does bad politics cause bad policies? Not necessarily. Politics is the way that you expect things to get done by government. It doesn't mean the government's bad. Sometimes there are policies that go awry. That doesn't make them bad policies. Current systems frustrations that citizens have that their government isn't doing enough or sometimes gets too involved in their everyday ordinary lives are a result of the Constitution that sets up the principles about how government is going to run. It's not necessarily frustrations with political leaders. There is a few bad apples, but by and large, the vast majority of political leaders at the local, state, national level do a tremendous job. The Constitution was written to make governing hard. It's it's meant to be inefficient. It's not like European parliamentary democracies that have executives as part of parliament and such that it's very much easier to get policies implemented. But that doesn't necessarily mean those policies are good. Sometimes it's just has to be done to take a long time to get good policies implemented in the United States. How does the American system affect policymaking? Well, you have constitutional provisions. Remember, the Constitution is meant to limit the power of the government. As a result, you have separation of powers, which makes the president and Congress rivals for power. Congress has to represent their constituents. They're not necessarily going to represent the nation's interests. Federalism, as another principle, makes it difficult to have a national policy. The states are self interested. Judicial review makes Congress, the president, and the Oval Office an agency subject to court examination. By judicial review, the power of the courts to find actions of the executive and Congress to be outside the Constitution and in conflict with it. Interest groups love it because interest groups bring suits, class action suits, and so forth in the courts, claiming that somebody is violating the Constitution. And freedom of speech and assembly protects lobbying. And lobbying is the means by which interest groups get their foot in the door of those that are making policy. This whole system of government is adversarial. There's no incentive to cooperate. Adversarial politics has its consequences, puts a premium on the ability to dramatize issues, to make sure that somebody thinks that your position is the correct position and the other side's position is wrong. It leads to attacks on your political opponents as a way to show that they are wrong. Downplays negotiations and compromise. No one wants to compromise, and there isn't necessarily any incentive to do such. And it gives incentive to dig up dirt and blow the whistle on your rivals. There's a way of classifying and explaining the politics of different policy issues. Looking at this chart, you have perceived benefits on the left side. And remember, all politics is perception. If the perceived benefits are concentrated on a small group, or you can have perceived benefits distributed, to a whole lot of people. And as a result, then you can look at perceived costs. Costs can be distributed. The perception is that everybody's paying for it. And as a result, no one has to be in charge of or have a large chunk taken out of them. So the costs, whether it be time, effort, money, are distributed. Or those costs can be concentrated on a small group. If the perceived benefits are distributed and the costs are distributed, in other words, benefits that go out to everybody and everybody's paying for them, you have majoritarian politics. If the benefits are distributed, but the costs of getting those politics implemented are concentrated. You have entrepreneurial politics, the entrepreneur, the person who gets things done. If the perceived benefits are concentrated, but the costs of implementing those politics are distributed, you have client politics. And finally, interest group politics, when the perceived benefits are concentrated and the costs are concentrated. Examples: client politics, system in which a small group that would benefit from a policy has a majority pay for it. Examples: dairy farmers and milk subsidies. Dairy farmers get the milk subsidies, everybody in the United States pays for them in higher costs for milk. Labor unions that manage to get into federal projects. So labor unions are benefiting, everybody pays for federal projects by increased taxes. This is called pork barrel politics, where you have a particular client group of a congressional district is managing to get the benefits, and everybody in the United States is paying for it. Everybody in the United States is paying for a dam put on a river in a small section of the state. Only the people that near the dam that benefit from the water being held back and building the dam, they're the ones that benefit from it, but the entire United States is paying for a federal project. Clients win because no one loses enough from policy to organize and complain about it, and the pork is always distributed everywhere. Congress supports because someone gains and there's little opposition to pork barrel client politics. Entrepreneurial politics: small coalition works hard to represent a large number of beneficiaries that will impose a heavy cost on a small group. Examples, even from your text: Ralph Nader and his railing against consumer fraud, especially in the automobile industry. Howard Jarvis in California with policies to rein in the Californian government. These two were entrepreneurs. The costs of trying to get these policies implemented were on their shoulders, but everybody is paying for it. Examples: safety, environmental policies, tax policies are entrepreneurial politics. Interest group politics are policies as a result of competition between rival groups. Called as pluralist politics, winning coalition consists of whichever side amasses the most number of votes. Winning depends on the size, the strength, and the energy of your group. The stakes are not necessarily monetary. You can have interest group politics with competing groups on abortion, gay rights as two examples. Congress, state legislators hate interest group politics. It puts Congress members and state legislators between a rock and a hard place. They cannot please both sides. Somebody's going to be upset, and they hate interest group politics. Majoritarian politics, where a majority of people stand to benefit and they're willing to pay the cost. Examples: Social Security and during the New Deal, Medicare in the 1960s, the Patriot Act immediately following the 9/11 disaster. National health insurance today? Question mark. Will that be an example of majoritarian politics, that everybody wants it and everybody's going to pay for it? It remains to be seen. Public opinion is the key factor. If it can be seen that the public wants something done quickly, majoritarian politics is the easiest thing for members of Congress and state legislators to do. Interest groups are rarely decisive in majoritarian politics. Public opinion rules out the day, and interest group politics becomes burdensome.